welcome. I am Reverend Montclair, and this is not today Monday church because it is a Wednesday. I skipped my Monday church segment because I was having a snow day for no better nor worse reason than that. However, I did do some research in the middle of the night regarding Monday, and what I came across is this beautiful meditation that Tzvi Freeman, who is a rabbi in, of course, the Jewish tradition, of a meditation done in for the holiday of Sukkot, and that is where many people of Jewish faith will build a little shack, a little outbuilding outside of their homes or on their balconies and sometimes on city streets to dine in and sometimes to spend the week in, to remind themselves of how good they've got it, that they don't live in a little shack, that they get to experience the elements, that they get to be in touch with the feeling of being put out of your home, but not out of your heart, with your family, with your beliefs, with your faith. So these little buildings are made so that they are rustic to the point of you must be able to see the sky, the stars at night through cracks in the roof. And it can only have three sides, solid sides, and one open, which might be a big doorway or it just might be missing a wall altogether. I have been lucky to spend time in one of these structures while with friends celebrating Sukkot holiday. And the rituals of honoring the six directions with four branches of different plants was something I didn't know or recall, the depth that goes into the symbolism. And it struck me too of how similar it is to Native practice, Native American practice, where tobacco prayers, the morning tobacco prayers, are in some traditions used to call in the energies of the four directions plus two more above and below. And that is exactly what is done in this tradition that is relayed by Tzvi Freeman, Rabbi Tsvi Freeman. He's also the author of two books. One is called Bringing Heaven Down to Earth, and the other is, I'm trying to read my writing here, Wisdom to Heal the Earth. So he has some wisdom to share of how also to heal ourselves and our relationship, not only with the earth, but with all of the world of society and of our soul purpose as well. So in this tradition that I do not know where it originated, I only know his version of it, is again, the four kinds, the plants, are palm, willow, myrtle, and citron. And these are held together in a bundle and presented to each of the directions and shook to like wake up the aspects or the energies of those directions. So he begins with the south, and essentially he said southeast because in this tradition his face is always facing towards Jerusalem. However, if Jerusalem is not your homeland, perhaps if you were to incorporate this type of a ritual, it would be facing somewhere else. A phrase that we may use in American English would be like, if it's not your Mecca, then face another direction. So our Muslim influences even in our language. What is your true north, in other words? So first he begins with the south, and the south, to paraphrase, represents kindness, giving, and warmth. But each direction can also have a negative aspect. And this is what the intention of this ritual is to bring into balance yourself with all of these different aspects, which we may be overindulgent or underindulgent with. And when I say underindulgent, I may mean it may be missing from your life, or you may be not offering the aspects to yourself and only to others. So he had mentioned about how we can have wars inside of us between these different aspects. So again, south, kindness, giving, and warmth. So are we being kind only to others and warm and accepting, but not to ourselves? So we take this bundle, this intention, to the direction of the south to shake it up, and let it realign within. And then not only do you shake it up in that direction, but you bring it into yourself. You bring it in towards yourself, your person, and then into your heart. That's the intention. So you bring it towards you and then into your heart. So with each of the 6 directions, this is what he modeled in his video that I watched. I thought it was really beautiful. So the South, you know, the questions you ask yourself, are you giving too much? Are you over, are you being overly warm with someone or something that perhaps doesn't deserve it or it doesn't warrant it? Are you trying to get something by giving something kind? What is that imbalance? Or is your kindness, your giving, and your warmth, is it honest? Is it true? The next direction is the north. And he said in the north, it represents a holding back. It means it also is a strength because it takes strength to hold back something that you may intuitively or just naturally want to bring forth or speak out or give. But also it can be a tightness, a fear. So what is that? The opposite aspect of strength can be the fear. Or you could use the strength against yourself or even against others. And ultimately it is the fear. So is the holding back a positive aspect where you may express only a little at a time so as not to overwhelm the other, the person that you may be communicating with? So I'm looking for a word that is restraint. So is it a positive use of personal restraint, or is it a negative one? Is it one where we feel undeserving of connection? So this restraint that we place on ourselves, or is it just a tempering of exuberant enthusiasm that might be necessary so as not to overwhelm the other? So these aspects, once again, you take your bundle and you put it towards the northern direction. You shake it up and then you welcome it. You bring it to yourself and then you welcome it into your heart space. This is an intentional mental discipline and the use of your imagination to create an experience that helps clarify our presence, our energy, and our experience in the world. The next direction, he says, is the east, and that is where compassion and beauty, perhaps the experience of beauty, compassionate understanding, perhaps. So, compassion, can we be too compassionate with others, with ourselves? Can we make excuses for ourselves, for others? And perhaps that is the imbalance. So there's the positive aspect, compassion. We need compassion in this world. We need to be in a place within ourselves where we have compassion for others so that we are not selfish and monstrous in our dealings with the world, in our dealings with other human beings. So compassion is a beautiful thing when we can have empathy for others, when we can imagine walking in their footsteps, in their experience. And beauty. What is beauty? Beauty can be where all is in balance, like the Hojo aspect of beauty and harmony. That's the Navajo concept. That's the prayer that I say at the closing of almost all of these talks, is all about walking in beauty. And beauty is about balance and harmony. But what if the negative aspect of beauty is dismissing all that is not beautiful to a certain standard? Is beauty limited or is beauty unlimited? Is beauty transient or is beauty transformational? So these negative and positive aspects of each of these, again, you take your bundle and you shake it up in the direction of which these characteristics are in existence. And then we bring it into the self. We then bring it further into our hearts and we let it rest there. The contradictions and the experience, and allow it to settle so that there are no more contradictions, so that the positive is allowed to percolate within. The next direction, he says, is above. And above, he says, represents winning, victory, but also competition, the need to be better than somebody else, which would be the negative aspect of winning. Can we approach winning with gratitude rather than with I want to say condensation, but that sounds like rain, without being condescending towards another? Can we approach feeling victorious without there being a loser? What is it that we need to win or be victorious over? What is it in our own personality that we may need to be victorious over? Is it a tendency towards talking ourselves out of something exciting? Is it a tendency to procrastinate? Is it a tendency to let our fears run away with our thoughts and therefore we don't follow our heart's path? So it is as if the negative aspect would be like the need to win, as opposed to the appreciation of that which perhaps we've already won. Have we won the trust of others? Have we won the trust of ourselves by being consistent and actually doing the things we say we're going to do, or at least making wholehearted attempts to do so? Because if we do everything in our power to achieve our goals and our dreams. And if we still don't achieve it, at least we tried our best. If you do your best, that is all that is required. It doesn't matter ultimately if you failed in doing your best, because you can never truly fail if you are putting your best effort forward. You will learn something and you will know that you gave it your best. That is not failure. Failure is in not trying. Failure is in refusing to take the risk. So that's above. We take the bundle of these four kinds, the palm, the willow, the myrtle, and the citron, and we shake it to wake up the direction, to wake up the aspects, the characteristics of that direction, the above. And then bring it into ourselves, bring it into our heart space, and allow it to settle in. Allow the contradictions of those characteristics to melt away, to become one with ourselves. The next direction, says Tsvi Freeman, is below. And this is something that I've come across in Judaic writings and other traditions, where the ground is holy, not just in Jerusalem, but the earth is holy ground, So below, he says, you surrender to something that is greater than you. And the earth is where they're looking. They're not looking in the sky for some disembodied or removed from earth sacredness. No, the sacredness is in the soil. And this is a very beautiful concept that I've come across in Judaic thinking. So surrendering to something greater than ourselves. But then, what is the negative aspect of that? Surrendering too easily to something that may be larger and more powerful, but maybe not sacred. This is like when some fall into addiction. It is something greater as far as more powerful sometimes than people's will. So what is this that needs to be shook up? Take the bundle, bring it down low to honor the earth, the soil, this huge planet that we all walk about on thoughtlessly. Shake up that connection, renew that connection with the earth. So often we spend so much time in our heads that we don't even recognize how we are so very connected and needed to be connected with the earth. We shake up the aspects of surrendering to that we belong here, that we are nature. We're not just living in nature externally. We breathe the air. It is in all of our cells. We drink the water. It is in all of our cells. We eat the food that contains the minerals from the soil. It is in all of our cells. We are nature. We have to remind ourselves of this connection, just like the Jews in their Sukkot huts. They remind themselves of how good they have it when they allow themselves to spend the time in the makeshift little huts, which also reminds them of their ancestors on their escape from slavery in Egypt, when they had to leave their homes and move again and move on. So that is the story of the lineage being carried from place to temporary place. I think I can identify with that right now because I've been on a journey of moving from place to temporary place for the last 6 months. And I am grateful, and I do see the stars. And I hope you take your time to see the stars too. But we're not done yet. The West, the direction of the West stands for foundation, for generosity. So the foundation of our beings. And that foundation is what we stand upon. It could be traditions that are sometimes passed on for generations and then kind of suddenly forgotten. And maybe it's worthwhile for us to remember some of these traditions. Maybe it's worthwhile for us to have something that continues in the lineage of who we are and who we've come from, something that connects us to our ancestors. And what is this generosity? Can you be generous with yourself? Or is it only with others? So, where's the imbalance that's possible, the negative aspect of this? And is where you came from a toxic experience? So, how do you integrate something positive from that and not bring forward the toxic aspects of it? What did you learn about where you came from that is worth bringing forward? And what did you learn or experience that is not worth bringing forward? The same with the generosity. You can be generous with others to a fault. You can give too much of yourself. You can give so much that you've got nothing left for yourself. So how can we bring that aspect into balance? Take the bundle. I'm representing my fingers as the bundle of the four kinds, or the four species as they can be called. And you take it and you go to the West and honor, shake it up, the West direction. What are we shaking up? We're shaking up all of those possible paradoxes, those experiences in the symbolic representation of that direction. So we're shaking up our foundation, we're shaking up our ancestry, we're shaking up our ideas or experiences about generosity. So we're waking up these qualities, and again, we take those aspects that are shook up and we bring them in to our self, our person, and bring them into your heart. Let them sink into your heart. Let that alchemical process be in the heart. It's not outside of ourselves, it's inside of ourselves. So when we see the chaos in the world, maybe it needs to be shook up, mixed around, rearranged, reproportioned, and brought into the heart, and allow the integration to begin in the heart. This, I mentioned that the honoring the directions, is to me very similar of what I have not only witnessed but also experienced with these morning tobacco prayers in the Native American tradition, in a Native American tradition. And in that tradition where you take the tobacco and you offer it to these different directions and you say an honoring prayer, so to the east, to innocence, to the little mouse, to the animal aspect of it. And then we hook it with your finger and bring it into your heart. So it's very similar to what he's speaking of here, Tsvi Freeman. And perhaps he's had experience with Native American, these types of Native American traditions, and maybe that's where this came from. But ultimately, what this is about is a mystical tradition. So he is part of, Rabbi Tsvi Freeman is part of the Hasid or Hasidic part of Judaism, which there are many different sects which have different traditions, yet they share some as well. And one of them, which to me is very appealing, is the focus on being joyful, on being joyfully alive in your faith and in life and in your practice. So to find joy in life, even as there are so many distracting and disheartening, experiences and traumas all around the world, we cannot always embody the world's trauma. We are allowed to be separate from that, to have joy in our lives, to experience beauty and balance, to walk through the world self-contained in that beauty, even as we may have compassion and empathy and generosity towards those that are going through things that we may not be at present. We don't need to take on the woes of the world, but we can offer our love to the world during these times that many are suffering, many are uprooted, many have been killed for very unjustifiable reasons. So, in this country where the anti Semitic or anti Jew rhetoric has increased, I would like to bring awareness to there's so much beauty in the Jewish tradition and how Christianity is a kindred spirit to the Judaic world, because I like to remind people that do not have this knowledge or remembering of, and in the Christian world, that Jesus was a Jew. He was a rabbi, which means teacher. Jesus was Jewish. Jesus's mother was Jewish. Jesus's stand-in father, Joseph, was Jewish. That was a Jewish world. That is where the Christian religion began, as an offshoot of the Jewish religion. But Jesus was not Christian. His mother was not Christian. They were Jews. So when we have Christians that are hating on Jews, there's a significant problem, a significant identity crisis of which they're not even aware. Anyway, that's all biblical stuff you can look up on your own if you don't believe me. And if you don't care, it doesn't matter. But what does matter is your relationship to yourself, your relationship to the world, the natural world, and your relationship with others. And these aspects, it's just symbolism. We are creatures of symbolism. That is something that may separate us from the rest of the animal kingdom. Can't know for sure. However, our ability to use symbols and to communicate with symbols, like language, like writing, like movement, like music, that is something that might be one of humanity's most defining characteristics. We call ourselves the wise, the wise ones, which I don't think is accurate. Homo sapien, sapien meaning wise. I think that is very um, high-minded of us to think of ourselves as wise. But what we are storytellers. We tell ourselves stories. They may be true, they may be false, and that is where our talent lies. So that's who we are. We are Homo storytellers, and I've forgotten the Latin word for that. But the symbols are part of that story. And when we can tell our story, our true story, yeah, even our secrets, that's where the healing is. when we can externalize that which we would rather disown, when we can externalize through symbol or story the experiences that have made us who we are, and also whom what perhaps have prevented us from becoming whom we are meant to be. And when I say whom we are meant to be, I mean that we all have some kind of purpose. And that purpose ultimately is about healing and expressing your truth, not your false self, your truth. So the symbols, whether they are in sticks, whether they are in directions, whether they are in religion, whether they are in saviors or in God or gods, goddesses, are symbols that we attach to. It says a lot about who we are, but it also says a lot about what we need. So we have in the Christian religion a Father God, and are in denial of the Mother God aspect. Because in Christianity, which was a reaction to the goddess religions that existed before, there is a lot of evidence of the goddess traditions. There are thousands upon thousands of female clay figures, stone figures, carved in stone figures of female figures that were not on display in our museums here in the Western world because they were not deemed to be important by the male curators of the museums. They were disparagingly called fertility symbols rather than actual representations of the goddess. So prior to men and women knowing how babies were made, how conception happened, it was a miracle of birth. It was a mystery, part of the great mystery of where and how life began. Not only on the planet, but of course, being so self focused, human life begins in the belly, right, of a woman. The women were gods. The women were revered. The women were honored. And later on, when men, women recognized that yes, men had something to do with this, then all of a sudden the backlash was, oh, we're the important ones. We're the God. We're the ones who have the power. We're not going to defer to the female anymore. We're not going to honor the female anymore. In fact, we dishonor the female because we felt like we were second-class citizens for centuries. So we are, hopefully, at the tail end of that backlash where women were seen as and put down as not only second-class citizens, but not even given the right to be citizens. And during this process of the hopefully great equalization, there's another backlash, which is of many men who do not wish to give up the power that they've had for so long. And in that, women's rights are being stripped away. The respect for women in some cultures is being stripped away. And I watch as these men, in this action, what they're doing is revealing their fear. They're revealing their fears of the power that many women do have, not just in giving birth, but intuition, in wisdom, in knowledge, which was actively tried to be suppressed in so many cultures. We're coming up to the end of October where much is talked about witches and feared witches. But what we did in our society in years and centuries past is that men, when they decided to burn the goddess temples and make themselves the powerful, meaning the ones in charge without consulting women's wisdom, the women's ways were negated. The connection with nature, the knowledge of the herbs, the knowledge of healing, the nurturing characteristics. So those were all denied and put down, and a different kind of medicine um, came around. It was a masculine version of medicine, which really didn't focus on healing. The focus was on curing. And that still is part of the consciousness in our society today, where if the patient dies, it is seen as a failure for the doctor. And it's not about the patient, whoever is unwell, necessarily getting well because we live in a capitalist society. It's about, can we manage the symptoms with medicine, patented medicines that cost lots of money, and the capitalist wheel goes round. It's not about healing, it's about managing, it's about being in control, it's about being powerful over others, which is the toxic masculine aspect rather than the sharing power, which tends to be more of how the feminine um, aspect rules. Sharing power, not a patriarchal um, society where there is a hierarchy, but again, sharing of power. So anyway, here we are in October, towards the end of it, and there are so many things going on in the world that, again, break your heart, and may your heart break open to allow the light in. May you recognize different aspects of yourself that might be out of balance that you can shake up in some way and bring them back into balance. So where there's a positive characteristic, there can always be a negative one. What can we do to shake it up, shake it off, and to move forward more whole, more honest in who we are, in who we're meant to be, and what we will find is that we are stronger than we thought, wiser than we knew, and on a path full of purpose and even passion when we tune into that heart space, which is so vast that it can hold the entire world with all of its joys and with all of its sorrows. And yet, still, we can allow ourselves to be joyful, to pay attention to all of the little things of life that are beautiful, that are worthwhile, and yes, temporary, yet meaningful, yet in this moment, precious. None of us, as we are permanent. None of this life is permanent. Not even our breath in and out is permanent. Everything is constantly changing. And in that constant change, may we allow ourselves to become new and better and happier and more healed versions of ourselves. And I believe we will find, as we allow ourselves to heal from the inside, whether through our mental processing, our physical activity or choices, and through our relationships, renewing and ending, both can be positive. Through all of that, when we bring ourselves more peace within, we will find more peace outside of ourselves as well. So I wish you on this day beauty, and may you walk in beauty, with beauty before you, with beauty behind you, with beauty above, with beauty below, with beauty all around you. May you walk. I'm sorry I didn't make it here on Monday, but I'm here today on Wednesday, and peace be to you as you go through the rest of your week. See you next time. I am Reverend Montclair, and today is not Monday, but in general, it is Monday Church with Reverend Montclair. Peace. Love to you.